They'll be appearing on our podcast and also on our new streaming channel, which will begin this fall. Look for the Alan Watts channel and also 2 new Alan Watts apps coming your way. But today we're going to hear a talk that has been in the archives for many years, part 2 of Learning the Human Game. These podcasts are produced by the Alan Watts Organization in conjunction with the Ram Dass Be Here Now Network. Again, this is from Learning the Human Game, 1965, University of Michigan, and here's Alan Watts in Learning the Human Game.
This morning, I was talking to you about the problem of our fundamental assumptions about life and health. And this, of course, therefore involved a lecture on metaphysics. Because what I understand by metaphysics is simply whatever system of axioms we're operating on. And I tried to tell you what mine is. And you may say it's arbitrary, because I can't prove any of these assumptions. But I'm just suggesting that they are a fruitful basis for a life. That word fruitful is very important. In mathematics, for example, there are certain problems which are considered fruitful and certain problems which are considered unfruitful. You can't, for example, establish a mathematical system which excludes the rule of consistency. There's no future in that. No game, no play in it. And this, you see, becomes one of the most crucial questions about the theory of games and trying to decide what are good game rules as distinct from bad game rules. And let's say game rules that are fruitful are good. Games that give us a lot of play and a lot of adventure. And because what we want to do, apparently, is to go on living in an interesting way. And so the nature of productive or unproductive, fruitful or unfruitful game rules is extremely important. I think there's a parallel between ethics and language. Some of you have read my book, Psychotherapy East and West. I don't want to bore you with repeating things that you've already read, and I know some of you haven't, but let me just go over this a little bit again. Language is a very curious model for problems in ethics and behavior in general. Not so long ago, a new edition of Webster was published, in which the editors took an extremely liberal point of view. They regarded their duty as lexicographers to record the way language is actually being used by most people now. And therefore they admitted into the dictionary all sorts of expressions, like, say, the word contact used as a verb, which is extremely bad grammar from an old-fashioned point of view. But they record all this kind of thing because people are doing it. And also to address a clergyman as Reverend Smith is very bad grammar. Shows you're not educated. But the dictionary now records this use as something legitimate. And the most marvelous review of this dictionary was written by Dwight MacDonald in the New Yorker, who said the lexicographers have abdicated their responsibility. It's true that language should live and should change. But if the lexicographers give in entirely to this, there are no standards. Now this, you see, is an ethical question, but it's put in the form of language. Now what are we to do about that? There are certain people who argue that English as spoken in London in 1910 by the upper class people who had public school and university training is the right English language. If you get, for example, such a book as Fowler's Modern English Usage, you will find a marvelous guide to a certain epoch of correct English with very funny and sharp criticism of variations from this. For example, let's consider just one word, to dig, which has become extremely common in American speech. I dig you. What advantage does this word have over appreciate or enjoy or understand? Now, you must admit it does have a little bit of advantage. I appreciate you. I enjoy what you say. I understand what you say. Man, I dig what you say. Has a degree more of intimacy. It means that you and I belong to the same club. We probably smoke pot. And so we've got a little secret between ourselves that appreciate doesn't share, enjoy doesn't share, understand doesn't share. So it becomes a word of a subculture that has certain practices that are outlawed by the culture at large. Now, here you see the dictionary people are confronted with a dilemma. They have to be authorities because there must be rules. If there aren't any rules of language, we can never understand each other. If I refer to this 1 minute as a table, the next minute as a boojum, the next minute as a sub-dub, can't even spell that, you don't know what I'm talking about. But because we have agreed rules of language, just as we have agreed rules of which side of the road we shall drive on, and what kind of things we shall eat our dinner out of, and with what implements, and what sort of things we're going to eat anyway, we can have a community. We can't have a community if that's what we want. And incidentally, that's what we are, unless we have agreed rules. Now, the problem with ethics in general is this, that to find out how ought we to behave, people look up the past. And they say, now, Moses gave us 10 commandments. And those 10 commandments are sacrosanct. You've got to go back to those. But you know, when you come to be, I'm 50 years old now, and I have 5 grandchildren. And I realize how stupid my grandfather was, because I've attained the same age. In other words, I know how little he knew. Although when I was a little boy, he seemed to me marvelous authority. So constantly there's a tendency in us to look back to the past and say there are certain tried and true rules which people have followed for centuries. And they work. And we should adhere to the old rules. That's partly true. It's very important truth, as a matter of fact. Just so long as it isn't made an absolute truth. Then it becomes dangerous. Because while those people themselves who are in our past were adhering to their tried and true rules, they were also inventing things. They were trying new experiments. And so here's the parallel between ethics and language. If a language is dead, like Latin, it tends not to invent any new words. Although, as a matter of fact, at the Vatican Council, where all the debates are carried on in Latin, they have to have Latin words for things like telephone, automobile, and so on. But on the whole, the theological debates in Latin utterly resist new words. And so in India, where theological debates are carried on in Sanskrit, which is likewise a dead language, which is no longer used in living speech, but simply a language among scholars, They have no new words. But a living language is constantly inventing new words and new forms of grammatical expression. You are watching now a time in which the sentence is going out of existence. The subject-verb-predicate form of expressing yourself is lapsing from our literature, and yet our literature remains perfectly intelligible. I mean, except a guy like Burroughs, who's now advocating making a manuscript and cutting it in 4 pieces and rearranging them so that it reads a different way across and all that jazz. But by and large, the language must keep moving. Now then, what's the duty of the grammarian and the lexicographer? His duty is to keep everybody informed of the changes that are being made. He tells you all these new things are current, and in terms of what you're used to, the old language, that's the language he uses for the definitions. You know, he has dig. It has this meaning to put a spade in the ground and move the soil. That's dig 1. Dig 2, a word used to mean appreciate, to understand, etc., in a certain milieu of our society. What he's doing, he's keeping everybody informed of the way the rules are changing. And by those means, we can all keep up with it and know what's happening. Now, we don't feel any violence exercised upon us when we observe the rules of language. It is not a crime, punishable by imprisonment, to speak bad English. It may be a crime to tell a lie or to speak a libel, but to disobey the rules of English is not a crime. All that happens is you're not understood. And this is a very healthy situation because we have very little trouble as a consequence in getting people to be more or less intelligible. It's difficult. The English is a very difficult language to learn. It has no grammar. It's purely idiomatic. But nevertheless, an incredible number of people succeed in this very, very complex task. But we have an attitude to the rules that is completely intelligible and rational. If you can't speak the language, you can't have fun with your friends. If you want to get on with people, if you want to have friends, you've got to speak this language. That's all there is to it. Now, it seems to me that problems of ethics should be approached in exactly the same way as problems in language. That ethics is not something that should be referred entirely to the past. We should try ethical experimentation. What would you like to do? What new kinds of behavior would you like to explore? Do they injure anyone? Do they deprive anyone? Or would they be a new adventure? We should be creative in ethics. We should make out new patterns of ethical behavior, just as we make out new patterns of language in our effort to describe new experiences. That's what it is. I mean, I've been involved very deeply in the problem of finding language that is intelligible for experiences that people haven't had. My whole work as a writer has been devoted to the study of the psychology of religion and of religious experiences, mystical experiences, things that are supposed to be ineffable, which means unutterable. But I maintain they can be uttered if you're clever enough. So I went from that into the study of changes of consciousness brought about by certain kinds of drugs and said, I will describe what is going to happen because I would love to be able to meet this challenge. And so, but in doing this, I have to invent languages. But I have to somehow say, in terms of your language, this is the old language, what my new language means. So in the same way, why don't we invent new forms of behavior? We got to be stuck with all the forms of behavior we've always been accustomed to? Why not try something different? And see if it works. Now, what does it mean works? That's the question, isn't it? Then we get down to what games work. Now, let's take an illustration. I'll give you 3 games. First is tic-tac-toe. The second is something of the level of chess or bridge or poker. And the third is 3-dimensional chess. Now, tic-tac-toe is a game that reduces itself to tossing a coin. Who's going to start? Because if you know how to play tic-tac-toe, you win every time you have the first start. So it becomes boring. A game, as we say, with no future in it. Now let's go to the other extreme, which is 3-dimensional chess. I don't know if you've ever tried to play this. You play it on 8 boards, representing the 8 levels of a cube. See, a chessboard is 8 by 8. All right, pile 8 boards, as it were, on a high-rise, and then play the same set of men, through the boards. Imagine a knight's move inside a cube. Well, most people say this is absolutely too complex for me to follow. I can't keep up with this at all. You have to be a super intellect to do this. I mean, chess is a complicated enough game on a surface. To put it in a cube, and only the masters can even begin to understand it. So, whereas tic-tac-toe fails because it's much too simple, and therefore boring, 3-dimensional chess fails because it's too complicated. Now, why is tic-tac-toe so boring? Because it reduces itself to tossing a coin, and according to probability laws, the more times you toss a coin, the more is the probability that heads and tails will turn up in a 50-50 ratio. So what? In other words, the way in which, although each time you toss it, you've got a 50-50 chance of which will turn up, you see. Might be one or the other. There's no way of predicting it. You can predict that in 500 times of tossing, you will approximate to 250 times heads and 250 times tails. And in 1,000, you will be even closer to 500 times heads and 500 times tails. In 2,000, still closer. Now, as a game becomes predictable, it becomes boring. That's why people don't want to know their future. If you could go to a fortune teller or astrologer who would tell you just exactly what was going to happen to you, we all have a certain reluctance, I think, to do that. Because if we know what the outcome of something will be, it's not worth doing it. This is one of the very marvelous things that is a result of some research going on today. The Rand Corporation is extremely interested in a method for predicting the outcome of a war starting at any given moment. They're trying to find systems for assessing the military potential and saying, now, if a war starts now, the Russians will win, the Americans will win, or whatever, so that if you know what's going to happen, you don't have to do it. So in the same way, if you know the result of a certain course of action, you will lose the inclination to take it. The fascination of life, the fascination of games, is the unknown result, not the known result. So then, between the unintelligible complexity of 3-dimensional chess and the all too intelligible non-complexity of tic-tac-toe. There lie games like bridge, checkers, chess, poker, wherein we get a certain kind of blend of chance and skill. Games of pure skill tend to work themselves into a blind alley. We get people who are monsters of skill, the great chess masters, the great golfers, great shooting people, who, bounce a ping pong ball on the ground and suddenly shoot it through with an arrow. I can't compete with that. I think it's fascinating, I think it's marvelous, but I can't play with that. So what we're all looking for is an element of randomness and an element of order. Some skill in relation to some randomness. So we get optimal games in the middle. And we feel that these are games which have a future. You can get interested in them. And you can go on and on and on and on playing them. Because, on the one hand, you will never master them. And on the other hand, they will never seem to you absolutely beyond your ability, as three-dimensional chess might. So you've got here a possibility of challenging the disorder of pure chance, and yet you will never arrive at the point of conquering it. And for some reason, the human being finds this to be a beautiful situation. Let me switch immediately the whole analogy to another field altogether, the field of gardening. In the 18th century, there was a fashion for formal gardens, where all the tulips formed fours, where trees were clipped in the art of topiary to resemble peacocks and sundials, and elephants, and all kinds of things, and where all gardens were arranged on a symmetrical plan. At that time in history, there was even somebody who complained that the Lord God had not properly arranged the stars in the sky. That if he had made symmetrical patterns, the heavens would be far more beautiful than they are with the scatter. But don't we recognize today, from our aesthetic point of view, that the scatter of stars is lovely? What would you think of a heavens where the stars were all arranged at even intervals in concentric circles? Would you like that? Would you like to go out at night and see that? No. We like the stars scattered as they are, and we also like to see, when the waves break on the shore, the patterns of foam. And the funny thing is, you can look at those patterns hour after hour and realize that they never make an aesthetic mistake. Never. They never do anything inelegant. Just like a cat. It never makes a bad move. Do you make a bad move? Ever? Or are you like a cat? Or like patterns on the phone? It's quite a question. But there seems to be somewhere an optimal situation. Everything arranged symmetrically and in an ordered way, we understand, and we feel safe there, but we don't like it. It's confining. Everything purely chaotic, we can't make out at all. But there's somewhere a middle ground in relation to whatever degree of complexity the human nervous system has attained. There is a middle ground which we feel comfortable in because it's orderly, and yet at the same time it contains an element of excitement and unpredictability. And the balance of these two things is what we call the good life. So this is a practical application of the theory of games, behavior. You've got to have two ingredients, you see. The ingredient of control and the ingredient of no control. And always be sure you have both. Now, we're living in a culture that is opposed to this, which believes that life can be controlled. That wants, or thinks it wants, it doesn't really want, but thinks it wants, to cut out the random element. And so we constantly say there should be a law against it, whatever it is. And we are, by doing that, by working in that direction, we are going to create for ourselves a society, a culture in which everything is regulated. It will be safe that way. Today, in Beverly Hills, California, you can't go out at night and take an easy stroll for several blocks before a police car will overtake you and say, "What are you doing?" They say, "I'm just taking a walk." Well, you're a suspicious character. What are you walking for? Don't you own a car? Get off the road. We don't want strangers wandering around here. So whenever you want to go anywhere, you have to get in your damn car and go. You're not allowed to walk. So in the same way, you want to start a business? You want to make shoes and sell them somewhere to someone? You want to raise avocado pears and put them mildly on the market just to make a little money? What happens? I have a friend who raised avocado pears. A man came from the Department of Commerce with a 500-page form to fill in. He said, "I don't have a secretarial staff. I don't have, like the Carnegie Institute has, a vice president in charge of relations with the government." He said, "I won't fill your form in. It'll take me days. I haven't that kind of time." And they came back and said, "You must fill this form in." He said, "I can't fill it in." So he made the representative of the Department of Commerce sit down and fill in the form himself. He said, "Here are my records, you fill in the form." And the man stayed there several days and filled in this form. Well, now, the fact that all these controls had to exist was the result of people complaining about all the people who broke the rules. And so they worked out a form that if you could fill that in, you see, you would be controlled. You wouldn't be breaking the rules. But the society which is foolproof, where the laws are really efficient so that they're properly enforced, and there's the minimum opportunity for anyone to make a mistake, that society is the complete 1984 Big Brother setup. Nobody enjoys it. The game is no longer worth the candle. There's no risk. There's no adventure. To be completely safe is to be completely dead. On the other hand, you can see that the opposite of that is equally absurd, where there isn't any regulation, where you have a kind of anarchy, and where everybody has to carry a sword, as it's becoming in New York today. You have to go around armed in New York because of the proliferation of street crimes. Nobody wants that either. So we're always looking in the problem of government, the problem of law, the problem of control, for an optimal balance between liberty and license, and between control and spontaneity. And exactly the same problem exists for the painter, the sculptor, the musician. You see, let's take one of the very greatest of Western musicians, is J.S. Bach. To our ears, he appears symmetrical, orderly, stately. But every so often, Bach actually introduces a trick. He has a wonderful control of dissonances. He lets things happen and so combines his formality with little touches of informality. Just little touches, just a bit. So much salt in the stew, and keeps you constantly fascinated. So in painters, say, let's take Chinese calligraphy, which I was talking about earlier, is very, very strictly disciplined in formal art. But what they love is a real master calligrapher allows accidents to happen. His brush runs dry suddenly, and you get a sweep of a line like a horse's tail, where the ink ran dry. And there's a kind of interesting texture, an interesting dynamic pattern in that, which is much appreciated. Lovely. It livens the whole thing up. So they call this the art of the controlled accident. You see, the element in an artist which differentiates a very competent technician from an inspired master is that an inspired master is first of all a competent technician. And then he lets go of himself and allows things to happen beyond his control. But he introduces the elements beyond his control into the context that he has under control. So he can show you something that is a mess, but he'll put it in a context that makes it look marvelous. How a photographer can alter his framework in a certain way so as to take a filthy old ashtray or a pile of garbage and make it look gorgeous. He'll alter the light just thus and so, and he'll get the color absolutely marvelous and correct. He'll use all that technique, and he'll focus that technique on a heap of junk. Have any of you played with a gadget called a kaleidoscope? A kaleidoscope is it's like a kaleidoscope, but a kaleidoscope has pieces of glass set into it so that as you turn it and look through it, the pattern alters. A kaleidoscope has, instead of pieces of glass, a lens which shows you anything in the surrounding area, and you look at it, and it turns it into an octagonal repeating pattern. In other words, there's a circle made up of 8 triangles, each of which reflects the other. Now, if you look at a bookcase, which is an orderly thing, it's relatively uninteresting. If you look at any kind of symmetrical field, what you get in the kaleidoscope will be rather boring. But look at a mess. So a dirty ashtray, a messy desk, that's where you get the most beautiful results. So apparently the way we human beings tick is that that's what we want to see. We want to see the junky and the orderly thrown together. And either one extreme will horrify us. But if you put them together, it swings. Because that, you see, is exactly what we all are. We are a combination. See, as we look around the room, all of us look regular. We're just used to each other. We think that the way we are is the rational way. But if you took a human being and put him in front of somebody who had never seen a human being before, just took one of these things, you think, well, what kind of a mess is that? What a wiggly object that is. Doesn't make any sense. But because there are enough of us, and it keeps repeating the pattern, jut, 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 2 eyes each time, jut, 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 I begin to say, oh, well, that's order. But I don't want to see just that. I don't want to see the same face each time. I want these eyes to be brown, these eyes to be blue, these eyes to be serious, these eyes to be comical, these eyes to be critical, these eyes to be amorous, these eyes to be joking, pointing fun at me, or whatever, see? Then I get a good feeling in the midst of regularity. So I think this is our problem in trying to arrive at an idea of what is mental health. Mental health is a good game. And a good game is what keeps a certain balance between randomness and order. And a healthy society, therefore, is one which keeps a proper balance between law and whimsy. But this always escapes our capacity to enforce it. Do you see that? To have a society like that, we've always at a certain point got to trust the other fellow and give up control. Take a risk. Take a gamble. So you see now, in the Chinese theory of human nature, they disagree with us. We are apt to feel that people can't be trusted because we say the veneer of civilization is very thin. And when really critical events come up, even the most respectable people turn out to be savages. Little children, I've often heard people say, they're nothing but animals. And if you want to get these animals to have culture and to behave themselves, you've got to whip them. And this is, of course, the philosophy of original sin. But in the Confucian philosophy in China, they have a completely different idea, which is that the fundamental virtue of a human being is defined as human-heartedness, which is a higher virtue than righteousness, a higher virtue than propriety and fine manners, to be human-hearted. And when Confucius was asked for a definition of human-heartedness, he refused it. He said, you know what it is. Now, what is human-heartedness? Look, we know we all have passions. We are greedy. We are lusty. We are like to be comfortable and try and wangle ways in which other people do the work for us, and so on. And we know very well we all do these things. Now, Confucius' idea was that this kind of human nature is very trustworthy. You can rely on it. You can rely more on people's natural passions than you can on their virtues. For example, if I want to wage a war, and I want to do it in order to capture somebody else's wealth and his women, I'm going to be very careful in waging that war that I don't destroy his wealth and his women. I want them in top condition. So I'm going to wage a very skillful war that will paralyze my opponent, but not destroy. and not spoil the things that I want to get from it. But if I wage a war, not because I'm greedy, but because I'm righteous, and that enemy, that nation, has done something wrong morally, I'm going to demand unconditional surrender, and I'm going to use atom bombs and every kind of annihilation against him until he gives up. I will wreck his whole situation in the name, principle. And Confucius, 600 years BC, wagged his finger at that and said, that's not humane. It's too virtuous. He said, the goody-goodies are the thieves of virtue. So, we suffer, you see, in our culture from righteousness.
This was the second session, and this podcast was co-produced with the Ram Dass Be Here Now Network. For further information about the spoken word recordings of Alan Watts, please visit alanwatts.org. And also, thank you to Moment Records for use of our theme music by Zakir Hussain from his Rhythm Experience album. Again, I'm Mark Watts. This has been Being in the Way, and you'll find more information at the alanwatts.org website.
You know, there's a peculiar kind of exhaustion that settles into a person, and it has nothing to do with how much sleep you've had or how hard you've worked during the day. It's deeper than that. It's the exhaustion that comes from looking at your life, at all the things you do, all the things you're supposed to care about, and finding yourself asking that most dangerous of questions. What's the point of any of this? Now, this isn't a question that announces itself with trumpets. It doesn't arrive as a dramatic crisis, though sometimes it can. More often, it seeps in quietly, like water finding its way through the smallest cracks. You're going through your routine, doing what you've always done, and suddenly you notice that the meaning has leaked out of everything. The things that used to matter, the goals that used to pull you forward, they're still there, but they've become strangely weightless, hollow. You go through the motions because, well, what else would you do? But the felt sense of purpose, that vital energy that makes it all seem worthwhile, has simply evaporated. And here's what makes it so disorienting. You look around, and everyone else seems to be managing just fine. They're excited about their projects, their relationships, their plans for the future. They talk about their goals with genuine enthusiasm, as if these things really matter, as if they've found some secret you somehow missed. And you wonder, am I broken? Have I seen through something I wasn't supposed to see through? Or have I simply fallen into some kind of depression, some chemical imbalance that's stolen my ability to care? The feeling often starts with the big things. You think about your career, and you realize you're climbing a ladder that doesn't actually lead anywhere you want to go. Or perhaps it does lead somewhere. But when you imagine arriving at that destination, you can't find any real satisfaction in the image. You'll have the title, the salary, the recognition, and then what? More of the same, just at a higher altitude. You see your colleagues who've made it to where you're heading, and they don't seem any more fulfilled than you are. They've just gotten better at hiding it. Or perhaps they've stopped asking the question altogether. Then it spreads to the smaller things, the daily activities that are supposed to add texture and meaning to life. Hobbies feel like elaborate distractions. Entertainment becomes a way to fill time rather than something genuinely enjoyable. Even relationships can start to feel like performances, roles you're playing, because that's what people do. You love your family, your friends, but there's this strange distance, as if you're watching yourself interact with them from somewhere far away, going through the appropriate emotional responses without really feeling them fully. And the future, the future becomes particularly problematic because our entire lives are organized around the future, aren't they? We're always working towards something, saving for something, preparing for something. But when everything feels pointless, the future collapses into an endless repetition of the same empty present. You'll wake up tomorrow go through your routine, have your experiences, go to sleep, and then do it all again and again and again. For what? To survive so you can continue surviving? To be happy when happiness itself has started to feel like just another item on an impossible checklist? Now, when this feeling arrives, people typically respond in one of several ways, and none of them quite work.
Before we continue, many of you have been asking for something longer, something with actual practices you can use in daily life. So check out the 3-hour audiobook that takes everything we explore in these videos and gives you the tools to actually work with it. Because here's the thing, intellectual understanding without practical application just keeps you spinning in your head. You need both, the insight and the practice, the philosophy and the daily work that makes it real. This audiobook gives you that. 3 hours of deep wisdom with practices built in, so you're not just thinking differently, you're living differently. If you're serious about changing how you experience your life, the link is in the description below. Now, let's continue.
The first response is to try harder. You think, well, perhaps I just need to find the right goal, the right purpose. So you look around for something that might fill this void. Maybe it's a new career path, something more meaningful, more aligned with your values. Maybe it's a creative project, something that will express your authentic self. Maybe it's a relationship, a person who will make everything feel worthwhile again. Or perhaps it's a cause, something bigger than yourself that you can dedicate your energy to. And so you pursue these things with a kind of desperate intensity. You throw yourself into the new job, the new hobby, the new relationship. And for a while, it works. There's excitement, novelty, the feeling that, yes, this is it, I've found what was missing. But then, slowly or suddenly, that feeling fades. The new job becomes just another job. The creative project becomes another obligation. The relationship settles into routine. The cause reveals its limitations and contradictions. And you're back where you started, only now with the added burden of knowing that even when you find what you're looking for, it doesn't actually solve the problem. The second response is to try to think your way out of it. You read philosophy, psychology, self-help books. You're looking for the right perspective, the right framework that will make everything make sense again. And there's some value in this, certainly. Understanding can be helpful. But you notice something peculiar happens. You can understand intellectually that life has meaning. You can follow the arguments, agree with the conclusions, and yet the feeling of pointlessness remains untouched. It's as if there are two separate tracks running in you. One track knows all the right answers, can articulate why life matters, why your actions have significance. The other track, the one you actually live from, remains unconvinced, unmoved. Some people try to simply override the feeling. They commit to a philosophy or a belief system that tells them what matters, and they force themselves to care about those things. They create structure, discipline, routines. They tell themselves that meaning is something you create through commitment and action, not something you feel. And this can work for a time. You can function quite well, actually, by simply deciding that certain things matter and acting accordingly, regardless of how you feel about it. But there's an exhaustion in this approach, isn't there? A constant effort of will. And every now and then, in the quiet moments, the question returns, but why am I doing this? What's the point of forcing myself to care about things I don't actually care about? Then there's the root of distraction, which is perhaps the most common response of all. You keep yourself busy, entertained, stimulated. You fill every moment with activity, with media, with social interaction, with anything that keeps the question at bay. And modern life makes this remarkably easy. There's always something to watch, something to scroll through, something to occupy your attention. You can go days, weeks, even months without ever sitting still long enough for the feeling to fully surface. But it's there, isn't it? underneath everything. And the moments when it breaks through, those moments become increasingly uncomfortable, increasingly difficult to bear. Some people turn to pleasure, to sensation. They pursue experiences that make them feel alive, even temporarily. Adventure, romance, substances, risk. Anything that creates intensity, that cuts through the numbness. And there's a logic to this. If nothing matters, then at least you can feel something, anything. The problem is that pleasure has this diminishing return. What once thrilled you becomes ordinary. You need more intensity, more novelty, more stimulation to achieve the same effect. And eventually you realize you're running faster and faster just to stay in the same place, still feeling that underlying emptiness. And then there's the philosophical response, the one that says, well, if nothing matters, then I'm free. If there's no inherent meaning, no cosmic purpose, then I can do whatever I want. This is the existentialist position. And there's something appealing about it. It sounds liberating. But notice what actually happens when you try to live from this place. The freedom feels more like abandonment than liberation. Yes, you can do whatever you want, but what do you want? Without any felt sense of what matters, freedom becomes a kind of paralysis. Every option is equally meaningless, which means there's no real basis for choosing one thing over another. What makes this whole experience particularly isolating is that it's so difficult to talk about. When you try to explain it to someone, they often respond with solutions, with suggestions, with reassurance. Have you tried exercise, therapy? Maybe you need a vacation. Maybe you're depressed and should consider medication. And these might all be helpful things, genuinely. But they miss the point, don't they? Because what you're experiencing isn't a problem to be solved. It's more like a question that won't go away, a seeing that can't be unseen. Or people will try to inspire you. They'll remind you of all the good things in your life, all the reasons you have to be grateful, all the people who love you, all the opportunities available to you. And you know they're right. Objectively, logically, you know you have a good life, perhaps even a great life. But that knowledge doesn't touch the feeling. It's like someone describing a delicious meal to you when you've lost your sense of taste. Yes, I understand this is supposed to be good, but I can't actually taste it. Sometimes the feeling becomes so pervasive that you start to wonder if this is just what life is, and everyone else is simply better at pretending otherwise. Maybe all of human civilization is just an elaborate distraction from this fundamental emptiness. We create culture, art, science, religion, relationships, all these complex systems and structures, not because they're inherently meaningful, but because we need to give ourselves something to do, some way to avoid facing the void at the center of everything. And there's a particularly modern dimension to this experience. Because we live in a time of unprecedented material comfort and opportunity, at least for many of us. Our ancestors were too busy surviving to ask whether life had a point. The question of meaning was answered by necessity. You worked to eat, you had children to continue the family line, you participated in your community because you needed each other to survive. Purpose was built into the structure of life itself. But now, for many of us, survival is relatively secure. We have time, resources, options. We're told we can be anything, do anything, create our own meaning. And this freedom, this abundance of choice, it can actually make the question of pointlessness more acute. Because when you can do anything, the question becomes, yes, but what should I do? And who's to say? On what basis do you choose? What makes one path more meaningful than another when all paths are equally available and equally optional? You see this especially in the realm of work. Previous generations had roles, vocations, callings. You were a farmer because your family were farmers. You were a craftsman because that's what your community needed. Your work was woven into a larger social fabric that gave it context and significance. But now, work is supposed to be a form of self-expression, a source of personal fulfillment. You're supposed to find your passion, follow your purpose, make a difference. And if you don't feel passionate, if you don't feel fulfilled, if you're not making a difference, well, that's a personal failure, isn't it? You failed to find the meaningful work that was supposedly there waiting for you. The same pattern appears in relationships. They're supposed to complete you, make you happy, give your life meaning. Your partner is supposed to be your soulmate, your best friend, your source of passion and comfort and growth all at once. And if your relationship doesn't provide all these things, if it feels more like comfortable companionship than cosmic significance, you wonder if you're missing something, if you're with the wrong person, if real love would feel different. Even leisure time becomes fraught. You're supposed to have hobbies that enrich you, experiences that broaden you, travels that transform you. Every moment is supposed to be optimized, meaningful, worthwhile. And so when you find yourself spending your free time just, sitting there, or scrolling mindlessly, or doing something that doesn't improve you or fulfill you, there's this nagging sense of waste, of failure, of life slipping through your fingers while you do nothing important with it. And underneath all of this, underneath all these attempts to find meaning or create meaning or convince yourself that meaning exists, there's a simpler, more fundamental question. The question isn't really, what's the point of this particular activity or that particular goal? The question is, what's the point of me? Why am I here? What is this strange fact of my existence for? I didn't choose to be born. I didn't ask for consciousness, for this awareness that can turn back on itself and question its own purpose. And yet here I am, thrown into existence, expected to figure out what to do with it, expected to care about it, expected to find it meaningful. When you really sit with this, when you let yourself feel the full weight of it, there's a kind of vertigo, because you realize that you are this temporary, fragile, utterly contingent thing. You appeared out of nothing, you'll return to nothing, and in between, you're supposed to somehow make it all matter. You're supposed to care deeply about things that, in the grand scheme of the universe, don't register at all. The universe doesn't care if you're happy or sad, successful or unsuccessful, if you fulfill your potential or waste your life. It simply doesn't care. It's indifferent. And you're just a brief ripple in an incomprehensibly vast process that was unfolding long before you arrived and will continue long after you're gone. Now, you might think this recognition would make things worse, and often it does, at first, because it seems to confirm the feeling of pointlessness. If nothing matters in any ultimate sense, if the universe is indifferent, if we're all just temporary patterns of matter and energy that will eventually dissipate, then what's the point of anything? Why not just give up? Why not just surrender to the meaninglessness of it all? But here's where something interesting happens if you stay with it long enough, because there's something else underneath the pointlessness, underneath the exhaustion and the emptiness and the endless questioning. There's a deeper current that you can only feel when you stop trying so hard to find meaning or create meaning or prove that meaning exists. And that's what we need to look at. Not as another solution, not as another answer to the question of pointlessness, but as a different way of being with the question itself. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really consider it. When you say everything feels pointless, what is it that's doing the feeling? Who is it that's noticing the pointlessness? There's something here, isn't there? Something present, something aware. And that something, that awareness, it doesn't feel pointless. The awareness itself, the consciousness that's watching all of this, questioning all of this, it's not empty. It's actually quite full, quite alive, quite present. You see, we've gotten ourselves into a very peculiar bind. We've confused the meaning of our lives with the meaning of our thoughts about our lives. We think that life feels pointless because we can't think of a point to it. But life isn't something you think. Life is something you are. And the being of life, the actual living presence of existence, it doesn't require a point. It doesn't need justification. It doesn't need to prove its worth. It simply is. And the isness of it, the sheer fact of being alive and aware, that's not pointless. That's not empty. That's the most fundamental fullness there is. Now, I know this might sound like semantic games, like I'm just playing with words. But stay with me, because something important is happening here. When you look for the point of life, you're looking in the wrong direction. You're looking forward into the future, towards some goal or purpose or destination that will make everything worthwhile. But life isn't happening in the future. Life is happening now. This moment, this breath, this sensation of being present and aware, this is life. Not the story about life, not the meaning of life, but life itself. And when you really pay attention to life itself, when you stop for a moment asking what it's for and simply notice what it is, something shifts. Because life, the actual immediate experience of being alive, it's extraordinary. Not because it's always pleasant or comfortable or fulfilling, but because it's here at all. The fact that there is something rather than nothing, the fact that you exist to experience anything whatsoever, this is, when you think about it, completely miraculous. You see, the question of pointlessness arises from a very specific assumption, an assumption we rarely examine. The assumption is that things need to have a point, that existence requires justification, that being alive is only worthwhile if it's for something. But where did this assumption come from? Who told you that your life needs a purpose beyond itself? Who said that the experience of existing isn't enough, that it needs to lead somewhere, accomplish something, mean something beyond what it already is? This is what I call the trap of instrumentality. We've learned to see everything as a means to an end. You go to school so you can get a job. You get a job so you can make money. You make money so you can be secure. You're secure so you can be happy. You're happy so you can, well, what? Live a meaningful life? And what's a meaningful life? One that has a point. And what's the point? To be happy. And around we go, each thing justified by the next thing, but never arriving at anything that's valuable in itself. But life itself, the actual living of it, isn't an instrument. It's not a means to something else. It's the thing itself. When you eat a delicious meal, you don't eat it in order to be full. Being full is part of the experience, certainly. But the point of eating isn't to arrive at fullness and then be done with it. The point of eating, if we must use that word, is the eating, the tasting, the savoring, the actual experience of it. And life is like this. The point of life isn't to arrive at some future state where you can finally say, now it all makes sense. Now it's been worthwhile. The point of life, if there is one, is the living of it, right here, right now. You know what happens when you listen to music? You don't listen to a symphony in order to reach the final note. The final note isn't the point. If it were, the best music would be the shortest music. Just play that last note and be done with it. But that's absurd, isn't it? The point of music is the music itself, the unfolding of sound in time, the experience of listening moment by moment. And life is like this too. It's not going anywhere. There's no destination you're trying to reach where you can finally rest and say, there, I've successfully lived. Life is what's happening along the way, in the supposed in-between times that we think don't count. Now, I can almost hear the objection forming. You're thinking, yes, but that's all well and good for moments of pleasure or beauty or comfort. But what about the rest of it? What about the suffering, the boredom, the pain, the endless, tedious, grinding through days that feel empty and exhausting? Are you telling me those have a point simply because they're happening? That seems like a rather cruel joke. And you're right to push back on that, because I'm not suggesting that suffering is good or that you should simply accept everything that happens as equally wonderful. But I am suggesting something else. I'm suggesting that the feeling of pointlessness, the exhaustion, the sense that nothing matters, this isn't actually caused by your circumstances. It's caused by the way you're relating to your circumstances, by the constant background assumption that life should be different than it is, that you should be different than you are, that there's somewhere else you're supposed to be, or something else you're supposed to be doing. Think about what happens when you're deeply engaged in something. Not forcing yourself to be engaged, not trying to care, but genuinely absorbed. Maybe you're having a conversation that fascinates you, or you're working on a problem that captures your full attention, or you're watching a sunset, or playing with a child, or reading something that speaks to you. In those moments, do you stop and ask, but what's the point of this? No, you don't, because the question doesn't arise. The experience itself is sufficient. It doesn't need justification because you're not separate from it, analyzing it, judging it. You're simply in it, part of it, flowing with it. The feeling of pointlessness, then, isn't about your life lacking meaning. It's about you standing outside your life, observing it, judging it, constantly evaluating whether it measures up to some imagined standard of what life should be. And from that position, of course, everything feels empty, because you've split yourself in two. There's the life that's happening, and then there's you, the observer, standing apart from it, asking if it's good enough, meaningful enough, worthwhile enough. And that observer, that judge, it's never satisfied, because satisfaction isn't its function. Its function is to evaluate, to compare, to find lacking. But who is this observer? Who is this judge that stands apart from life evaluating it? When you look closely, when you really try to find this separate self that's supposedly outside looking in, you can't find it. There's just experience happening, awareness of experience happening, but no separate entity apart from it all. The observer is itself part of the observed. The thinker of thoughts is just another thought. The self that seems to stand outside your life, questioning its meaning, is itself part of the life it's questioning. And this is where everything inverts. Because the search for meaning, the need to find a point to it all, this is itself the problem. Not because meaning doesn't exist, but because you're looking for it in the wrong way. You're looking for it as if meaning is something separate from experience, something that could be added to life to make it worthwhile. But meaning isn't separate from experience. Meaning is the texture of experience itself when you're fully present to it, when you're not busy evaluating it or wishing it were different. Let me put it another way. When you ask, what's the point? You're really asking, why should I care about this? And underneath that question is an assumption that you're separate from this, that you're a subject confronted with an object world that may or may not be worth your investment. But the actual truth of your experience, when you look at it directly, is that there's no such separation. You are not in the world encountering experiences that may or may not be meaningful. You are the world experiencing itself, knowing itself in this particular form, in this particular moment. The pointlessness you feel, then, is the exhaustion of maintaining this fiction of separation. It's tiring, isn't it? This constant evaluation, this endless questioning, this need to justify your existence. And the exhaustion itself is a kind of signal, a message from your deeper intelligence saying, stop, this isn't working, there's another way. What's the other way? It's the way of participation rather than observation. Instead of standing apart from your life asking what it means, you become your life, fully, completely. Not by forcing yourself to care about things you don't care about, but by dropping the question of whether you should care and simply allowing yourself to be present to what is. And here's the paradox. When you stop looking for meaning, when you stop demanding that life justify itself to you, meaning appears, not as something added to experience, but as the natural flavor of experience when you're not constantly filtering it through judgment and evaluation. A conversation becomes meaningful not because it's leading somewhere or accomplishing something, but because you're actually having it, actually listening, actually present. Work becomes meaningful not because it's fulfilling some grand purpose, but because you're actually doing it, bringing your full attention to it, engaging with it as it is, rather than as you think it should be. This is what the old Zen masters meant when they said that before enlightenment you chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment you chop wood and carry water. The actions are the same, but the relationship to them is completely different. You're no longer standing outside your life wishing it were different, waiting for the meaningful part to begin. You're in your life as your life, and the question of meaning or pointlessness simply doesn't arise in the same way. Now, this doesn't mean that everything suddenly becomes wonderful, or that you're happy all the time, or that you stop wanting things to change. You'll still have preferences, still work toward goals, still hope for certain outcomes rather than others. But it's all much lighter, much less burdened, because you're not freighting every moment with this impossible demand that it justify your existence. You can want things without needing them to make your life meaningful. You can work toward goals without needing to achieve them to prove you're worthwhile. You can fail, struggle, suffer even, without it meaning that your life is pointless. Because here's what we've forgotten. Life doesn't need a point. That's not a depressing realization. It's actually deeply liberating. Because if life doesn't need a point, then you are free. Free from the crushing burden of having to make your life mean something. Free from the constant anxiety that you're not doing enough, not being enough, not living right. Free to simply be here, alive, aware, experiencing whatever is arising in this moment without needing it to be anything more than what it is. And in that freedom, something wonderful happens. The world becomes interesting again. Not because you've found the answer to the question of meaning, but because you've stopped asking the question in that desperate, grasping way. You start to notice things again. The quality of light in the morning, the taste of your coffee, the feeling of breath moving in your body, the strange miracle of being able to think thoughts and form words and communicate with other beings who are also somehow alive and aware. None of this needs to be for anything. It's enough that it is. You see, the universe, this whole vast unfolding process, it's not going anywhere. There's no destination it's trying to reach, no purpose it's trying to fulfill. It's simply playing itself out, moment by moment, in an infinite variety of forms. And you are one of those forms. You're what the universe is doing right here, right now, in this particular location. You're not in the universe having an experience. You are the universe having an experience of itself. And from this perspective, the question, what's the point, is like a wave asking, what's the point of being a wave? The wave isn't separate from the ocean, trying to justify its existence. The wave is what the ocean is doing in that moment. It arises, it moves, it falls, and then the water that formed the wave becomes part of the next wave. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. Nothing needs to be for anything other than what it is. This is what the mystics have always tried to point to. Not a belief system you need to adopt, not a philosophy you need to follow, but a direct recognition of what you actually are underneath all the concepts and stories and judgments. You are not a separate self trying to find meaning in a meaningless universe. You are the universe meaning itself, knowing itself, experiencing itself in this particular form. And when that recognition really lands, not as an idea, but as a felt sense, everything changes and nothing changes. You still have your life, your responsibilities, your struggles and joys and mundane routines, but you're not carrying them in the same way. There's a lightness, a playfulness even, because you're not taking yourself quite so seriously anymore. You see, through the game of self, the story of me trying to make my life meaningful, trying to justify my existence, you realize you don't need to justify your existence. Your existence justifies itself simply by being. So what do you do with this? How do you live from this recognition? Well, you don't really do anything with it, because it's not a technique or a practice or a method. It's more like a remembering, a coming back to something you've always known but forgotten. And the forgetting is natural, part of the game. You'll forget and remember, probably for the rest of your life. But each time you remember, it gets a little easier, a little more familiar. And in the meantime, you just live. You do what needs doing, what calls to you, what appears in front of you. Not because it's meaningful, not because it's the right thing to do, not because it will make your life worthwhile, but simply because you're alive. And this is what being alive looks like. Sometimes it looks like work, sometimes like play, sometimes like suffering, sometimes like joy. All of it is life. All of it is the universe exploring itself through your form. The feeling of pointlessness, then, isn't your enemy. It's not a problem to be solved or a state to escape from. It's an invitation, a doorway, a call to wake up from the dream of separation, the exhausting fiction that you're a separate self trying to make a separate life meaningful. When everything feels pointless, that's life saying, stop trying so hard. Stop demanding that I be something I'm not. Just be here. Just be present. Just let yourself live without needing it to mean anything more than what it is. And that's enough. In fact, it's everything. Not because it's profound or spiritual or enlightened, but because it's actual. It's real. It's what's here when you stop looking somewhere else for something else that will finally make everything worthwhile. The whole search for meaning was a distraction from the only thing that's ever been real, which is this, right here, right now. Your life, exactly as it is, in all its ordinariness and extraordinariness, its beauty and its plainness, its joy and its sorrow. All of it, the whole catastrophe, as Zorba called it. Not meaningful or meaningless, but simply, wonderfully, mysteriously alive.
There is a curious paradox, which is, to love is unconditional, but to be loved is conditional. By the time one has crossed the 30s or 40s, they have seen enough of life to know that the fairy tales of youth were, at best, charming illusion. One begins to understand that love does not appear as a reward for virtue, nor is it guaranteed to remain, simply because you have been loyal, patient, or deserving. Some have poured themselves, drop by drop, into the vessel of another's life, only to watch it leak away through fingers that once clung to them. Others still dwell beneath the same roof with their chosen companion, yet feel as though they have become a stranger at their own table. And there are those who have wandered from heart to heart, thinking that the next embrace, the next yes, would finally fill the hollow within, only to find the emptiness echo back at them. You begin to wonder why something as natural as love has become such a labyrinth of conditions, unspoken bargains, and quiet disappointments. You sense that somewhere, beneath all the poetry and promises, there is a truth you have been avoiding. For love, as it is sold to us, is not love at all, but something dressed in its garment. And here, perhaps, lies the seed of our quiet discontent. We have confused the appearance of love with love itself, the structure that holds it, with the living thing it was meant to carry. From our earliest breath, the world whispered its bargain into our ears. Love is something to be earned. Behave as you are told, and you will be cherished. Fulfill the needs of another, and you will be kept. Offer beauty, strength, usefulness, devotion, and the reward will be love. But this is not love. It is a transaction masquerading as tenderness. It is the polite exchange of commodities between two people
who have been taught to call their bargain romance. You see, a bargain can hold people together, but it cannot nourish them. Like two merchants bound by contract, they remain so long as the terms are met. And when they are not, they part. No matter how many years have passed, no matter how deeply your lives have entwined, the invisible ledger will one day be brought to the table and the sums will be counted. Many men and women wake in the middle years of life to the cold recognition that what they once believed was love was only an arrangement. It might have been cloaked in vows before God, adorned with flowers, or sealed with the trembling promises of youth, but the heart of it was a simple pact. I will give you what you desire if you will give me what I desire. And when the giving stops, whether through weariness, age, illness, or simple change, the warmth fades. The eyes that once sparkled at your arrival now glance past you as if you had become little more than a shadow in the room. We were never told as children that such love is a performance and that performance is end. When you mistake the bargain for love itself, you spend your years in quiet exhaustion. You give your time, your loyalty, your devotion, believing this will secure the thing your soul longs for. But what you have secured is not love, only the continuance of an arrangement. And so it happens that many, after years of faithful giving, find themselves bewildered when the warmth fades. Not because they cease to care, but because life has moved, as all things do. Nothing stands still. Even stone wears away. Even plastic warps with time. The man or woman you first knew has changed, just as you have, and the bond built upon fixed terms begins to strain under the weight of impermanence. And there is another truth, more difficult to swallow. When the demands of the bargain are no longer met, the mask will fall. In the absence of what they sought from you, be it comfort, affirmation, or security, some will show you who they truly are. The tenderness you thought was theirs by nature may vanish, revealing not cruelty perhaps, but a hollowness where love was never rooted. You may have felt it, the gaze that no longer lingers, the laughter replaced by a cold and watchful silence. The shift is so quiet, you can almost convince yourself it isn't there. But in that stillness you see it. You were cherished not for your being, but for the service you rendered. And when such a union falters, it does not simply end. It unravels something inside you. It leaves you staring at the ruins, asking whether you were ever truly loved or only ever necessary. Love is not a bargain, nor is it a chain. It is not, I will if you will, nor the silent counting of who has given more. Such things belong to the marketplace, not to the heart. True love is a freedom, the liberty to give without ledger or demand. It is to be fully present with another, not to bind them, but to care for them, simply because the caring itself is joy. It is a gift given without the shadow of a contract, without the fear that it must be returned in equal measure. But here lies the paradox. Such love cannot be given by one who is starving for it. The heart that is desperate to be loved back will always, in some hidden way, attach strings to its giving. It will watch, it will measure, it will wait for the return. And when it does not come, bitterness will grow like ivy through the soul. You cannot love freely until you have ceased to beg for love. And you cannot cease to beg until you have found within yourself a source that does not run dry. That source is not in another's eyes, nor in their approval. It is in the quiet knowing that you are already the child of the very life that breathed you into being. Call it God. Call it the eternal. Call it the nameless mystery. It has loved you into existence before you could earn or deserve a thing. Look at the sun. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. To know this is to stand unshaken whether others love you or turn away. Then, and only then, can you give love as the sun gives light, not to be thanked, not to be owed, but because it cannot help itself. To love is your freedom. No one can take it from you. It is the act of your own being, the overflow of the life that moves through you. You may give it to one, to many, or to the whole world, but it remains yours to give, to be loved. Now that is another matter that is never in your keeping. You cannot command it, purchase it, or reason it into being. Love offered to you is a gift of its own accord, arriving when it will, leaving when it must. It is as the wind that brushes your cheek. You may open your arms to it, but you cannot hold it there forever. If love is given to you, receive it with gratitude. Drink of it while it flows, but never clutch at it, as though it were the last drop in the world. For the moment you try to drag it from another's hands, it ceases to be love and becomes something else, obligation, pity, or bondage. And remember this, you are already loved, not by the fickle tides of human affection, but by the source from which you came. It breathed you into life without condition, without demand. To see this is to know you are never wholly bereft. If you wish for love from others, it must begin here in loving yourself, not in the shallow sense of indulgence, but in the deep sense of accepting your own being without reserve. For a heart at peace with itself no longer begs, it invites, and when two such hearts meet, their love is not a trade, but a meeting of rivers, each full from its own spring. When two people who have learned to dwell at peace within themselves come together, it is not to be filled, for their cups are already full. They do not arrive at each other's door as beggars, bowls outstretched. They come as givers, carrying abundance that spills over the rim. In such a union, there is no bargaining. No one is keeping score, no quiet dread of who owes whom. Love is not given to earn, nor withheld to punish. It moves as naturally as breath, as the tide that rises and falls without being told. Here, the joy is not in taking, but in sharing. There is no hunger in the eyes, only light. One gives not because the other demands it, but because giving is the most natural expression of their being. And so both are fed, not by the draining of one into the other, but by the overflow of each. This is the only love that does not rot into resentment. For where there is no emptiness to be filled, there is no fear of losing. When two full hearts meet, they are free to let each other be, to grow, to change, to wander and return, without the grasping that turns love into a cage. And yet, such a meeting is rare, for most search the world to find another who will complete them, not knowing they were never half a person to begin with. Only when you drink deeply from your own well will you find another who drinks from theirs. And together you will not merely survive, you will overflow. The world you meet each day is not a stranger. It is yourself in another form. You cannot draw from a well what is not in it. nor can you meet in others what you have not yet met. In your own heart, if you carry a hollowness within, you will find yourself surrounded by those who take, not because the world conspires against you, but because nature fills a vacuum. Those who have nothing will seek from you what you have not given to yourself, and you will mistake their hunger for love. If, on the other hand, you move through life with a fullness of being, you will meet those who also carry an abundance. They will not clutch at you or drain you, for they are not living on scraps. Instead, you will find an ease in their company, a recognition as though you had always known them. This is not a mystical trick, nor some hidden cosmic law, but a simple truth of human meeting. The depth to which you have faced yourself becomes the depth to which you can meet another. Most quarrels in love are not between two people, but between the unexamined shadows each has brought along. So, before you go searching for kindness, tenderness, or devotion in the eyes of another, turn inward and meet your own gaze, not to condemn yourself, nor to tally your flaws, but to make the acquaintance of the stranger you have long carried in silence. For it is this hidden self who extends the invitation to others, this unseen presence, who will decide whether the love you meet will be a feast to your soul or the slow unraveling of it. When this truth takes root in you, do not hoard it. Place it gently in the hands of your children, for they are stepping into the same illusion that once ensnared you. Teach them that love is not the trembling romance of songs, nor the solemn bargain sealed before altar and law. It is the willingness to give without the shadow of a demand, to care without the constant fear of loss. If they do not learn this, they will build their homes upon sand and watch them crumble. But if they do, they will stand on rock, and love will not be a cage, but a sky. The question is not, how can I find someone to love me? But the question is, how can I become someone who overflows? For when love is no longer a plea but a gift, when joy is no longer chained to another's approval, you will see that to love and be loved is not something to chase. It is the way you already are. You are not a half searching for the other half. You are whole. And from that wholeness, love flows, finding those who recognize it instantly. Then love ceases to be a hunt or a bargain or a desperate keeping. It becomes the quiet, steady light of the sun, needing nothing in return, yet warming the whole sky.
You know, it's rather fascinating when you stop and look at it. Here we are, billions of us, spinning around on this blue marble. In space, each carrying within us the same ache, the same hunger. We dress it up differently, of course. Some call it loneliness. Others call it purpose. Some chase it through achievements. Others through possessions. But strip away all the costumes, all the clever disguises, and what remains? The desire to love and be loved. It's the most fundamental thing about being human. More basic than hunger. More persistent than the need for shelter. Because you can fill your belly, you can find a roof over your head, and still feel utterly empty. Still feel like you're wandering through life as a ghost, unseen, untouched, unknown. And yet, and here's where it gets interesting, we have made such a terrible mess of it. We've turned the simplest, most natural thing in the world into something complicated, something transactional, something that causes more pain than perhaps anything else in human experience. Why? Because we've confused the appearance of love with love itself. We've mistaken the bargain for the real thing.
Now let me ask you something. When did you first learn that love had conditions? Think about it. Go back. Perhaps you were a child, and you noticed that affection flowed more freely when you were good, when you cleaned your room, when you brought home the right marks from school. Perhaps you learned that smiles came easier when you made yourself useful, when you didn't make too much noise, when you fit into the shape others wanted you to take. Or perhaps it was later, in those early days of romance, when you discovered that to keep someone's attention, you had to perform. You had to be interesting enough, attractive enough, successful enough. And somewhere in those moments, a seed was planted. The seed that said love is something you earn, something you deserve, only when you meet the requirements. But here's the trouble with that seed. Once it takes root, it grows into a whole garden of misunderstanding. And by the time you're 30 or 40, by the time you've lived enough to see behind the curtain, you begin to realize what a strange game you've been playing. You've been trading pieces of yourself for scraps of affection. You've been performing in a theater where the audience is never quite satisfied. And the exhaustion. Oh, the exhaustion of it all. Let me tell you what happens when you build love on conditions. You create what looks like love, sounds like love, might even feel like love for a time, but underneath it's something else entirely. It's a bargain, an arrangement. You give me what I need, and I'll give you what you need. You be this for me, and I'll be that for you. And for a while, perhaps even for years, the bargain holds. The accounts balance. Each person delivers what was promised. And so the structure stands. But here's what nobody tells you about bargains. They're fragile. They depend entirely on both parties continuing to meet the terms. And life, being what it is, has a way of making that impossible. You age. You change. Your circumstances shift. The person you were when you made the deal is not the person you are now. And the same is true for the other. The whole thing is built on sand, you see, because it assumes that human beings can be fixed, predictable, reliable, in the way that a contract requires. But we're not machines. We're rivers. We're weather. We're constantly moving, constantly becoming something other than what we were. So what happens when the terms can no longer be met? When you can no longer provide what was expected? Maybe you lose your job and suddenly the security you offered is gone. Maybe illness comes and the strength or beauty that first attracted them fades. Maybe you simply grow tired of being someone you're not. And in that moment, the mask drops. The warmth that you thought was love reveals itself as something else. Obligation, perhaps. Habit, or worse. Nothing at all. Just a blank stare where tenderness used to be. I've seen it countless times. A man or woman who has given decades to someone who has been faithful, devoted, present, only to wake up one day and realize they were never truly seen. They were useful. They were necessary. But were they loved? Not in the way the soul requires, not in the way that nourishes. And the pain of that recognition, it's like discovering you've been speaking to an empty room all along. You thought someone was listening, but there was only an echo. This is the nature of conditional love. It is not cruel by design. Most people don't set out to hurt one another. But when love is built on what you do, rather than who you are, it cannot help but disappoint. Because what you do will change. What you provide will eventually run out. And if that's all you were valued for, then when it's gone, so is the love. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying that relationships shouldn't involve giving. Of course they should. Love naturally expresses itself through care, through service, through attention to another's needs. But there's a world of difference between giving that flows from fullness and giving that comes from fear. One is the overflow of a heart that cannot help itself. The other is the desperate attempt to secure affection to keep someone from leaving, to prove your worth. You can feel the difference, can't you? When someone gives to you from fullness, there's a lightness to it, a joy. They're not keeping score, they're not waiting for you to reciprocate in equal measure. They give because giving is its own reward, because the act itself brings them pleasure. But when someone gives from emptiness, from need, there's a weight to it, a burden. You can sense the invisible strings attached, the unspoken expectation that you owe them something in return. And that's not love. That's a transaction dressed up in affection's clothing. The tragedy is that most of us have been trained from childhood to engage in these transactions. We learned early that love was something to be earned, that affection was the reward for good behavior. And so we spend our lives trying to be good enough, trying to meet the conditions, trying to secure the love we crave. But it never quite works, does it? Because even when we meet the conditions, even when we do everything right, there's still that gnawing sense that we're not truly known. That if the mask ever slipped, if they saw who we really are beneath all the performance, they would turn away. And so we become prisoners of our own making. We trap ourselves in relationships where we cannot be honest, cannot be vulnerable, cannot rest. We must always be on, always performing, always maintaining the illusion that we are the person they agreed to love. And the exhaustion of it, year after year, decade after decade, it drains the life right out of you. You become a hollow thing, going through the motions, wondering why something that was supposed to bring joy has become such a burden. Let me tell you something about real love, the kind that doesn't rot into resentment. It's not a bargain. It's not a contract. It's not, I'll give you this if you give me that. Real love is freedom. It's the freedom to be exactly who you are, without pretense, without performance. It's being seen, truly seen, in all your messiness and imperfection, and still being cherished. Not because you've earned it, but simply because you exist. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. You cannot receive this kind of love until you've learned to give it to yourself. This is the great secret that nobody wants to hear. We all want to believe that the right person will come along and fill the emptiness inside us, that their love will heal our wounds, prove our worth, make us whole. But it doesn't work that way. It can't work that way, because a heart that is starving for love will always, in some hidden corner, turn even its most generous gestures into transactions. It will give, yes, but it will be watching, measuring, waiting for the return. Think about it. When you're desperate to be loved, every act of kindness you offer carries a silent plea. Love me back. See me. Choose me. And the other person, even if they don't consciously realize it, feels that weight. They feel the expectation, the need, the demand. And it creates a pressure that genuine affection cannot survive. Because real love, the kind that lasts, requires space. It requires the freedom to give or not give, to stay or go, without the relationship itself being held hostage. So the question becomes, how do you stop being desperate for love? How do you fill yourself so completely that you no longer need another person to validate your existence? And the answer is both simple and difficult. You must make peace with yourself, not in some shallow self-help sort of way, but in the deep sense of truly accepting your own being, every part of it, the parts you're proud of and the parts you hide, the successes and the failures, the beauty and the brokenness, all of it. This is not easy. Our entire culture is built around the idea that you should be constantly improving, constantly becoming something other than what you are. Better, stronger, more successful, more attractive. And implicit in that message is the idea that who you are right now is not enough. But what if you are enough? What if you've always been enough? Not because you've achieved anything or earned anything, but simply because you're here, because you exist. There's something that breathed you into being, call it what you will. God, the universe, the great mystery, life itself. Whatever name you give it, it brought you forth without asking your permission, without demanding that you prove your worth first. You were loved into existence before you could do a single thing to deserve it. The sun rises on you every morning without checking your resume. The air fills your lungs without asking for payment. You are held by forces so vast and so generous that your very existence is proof of unconditional love. Now, if you can see this, if you can really let it sink in, something shifts. You begin to realize that you're not a beggar standing at the door of life, hoping for scraps. You're already part of the feast. You're already held, already loved, already whole. And from that place of fullness, you can give love without strings attached. Not because you're trying to earn something, but because love is simply your nature. It's what overflows from you when you're not busy protecting yourself, not busy trying to get something. When two people meet from this place of fullness, something entirely different happens. There's no desperation, no grasping, no constant anxiety about whether the other person will stay or go. Instead, there's a kind of ease, a recognition. They don't need each other to be complete, so they're free to choose each other simply because they want to. And that choice, made freely, without coercion or need, is worth more than 1,000 desperate commitments. This is the love that doesn't keep score, the love that doesn't turn cold when you fail to meet expectation, the love that sees you on your worst day and doesn't flinch. Because it was never based on your performance in the first place. It was based on the simple fact of your being. And your being cannot fail. It cannot disappoint. It simply is. But let me be honest with you. This kind of love is rare, not because it's difficult, but because most people never stop running long enough to find it. They're too busy searching outside themselves for something that can only be discovered within. They move from person to person, relationship to relationship, always hoping the next one will be different. Always believing that if they just find the right person, everything will finally click into place. But it won't, because the problem was never finding the right person. The problem was being the wrong person, yourself. You cannot meet someone at a depth you haven't met yourself. If you've never sat quietly with your own thoughts, your own fears, your own pain, then you'll never truly sit with another's. If you've never forgiven yourself for being imperfect, you'll never forgive them either. If you've never learned to be alone without feeling empty, you'll turn every relationship into a life raft, and people can sense that. They can feel when they're being used to fill a void, and it's exhausting for them. So before you go looking for love, before you decide you need someone to complete you, try this. Sit with yourself. Really sit with yourself. Not with distractions, not with screens or noise or busyness, but just you and your own presence. And notice what comes up. Notice the discomfort, the restlessness, the voice that says you should be doing something more important. And then notice that voice is not you. It's just a thought, a habit, a pattern you learned somewhere along the way. Underneath all that noise, there's a silence. And in that silence, there's a kind of peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of not needing to. The peace of simply being alive, breathing in and out, existing in this moment without requiring it to be anything other than what it is. When you touch that peace, even for a moment, something in you relaxes. And from that relaxation, love becomes possible. Not the grasping, needy kind, but the kind that gives, without keeping track. The kind that stays or goes, based not on obligation, but on genuine care. And here's what's beautiful. When you find that peace in yourself, you start to recognize it in others. You can spot the ones who are also drinking from their own well, who don't need you to fix them or complete them. And when two such people meet, it's not about rescuing each other. It's about two whole beings choosing to walk alongside each other for a while, sharing what they have, learning from each other, growing together, but never losing themselves in the process. This is the great irony. The moment you stop needing love, you become capable of receiving it. The moment you stop chasing it, it finds you. Because you're no longer approaching people as a beggar, bowl outstretched, hoping they'll drop something into it. You're approaching them as someone who already has enough, who has something to offer, who can give freely, because giving doesn't diminish you. And people respond to that. They're drawn to it because it's so rare to meet someone who isn't constantly taking, who isn't draining energy, who isn't using the relationship to fill some bottomless need. So if you want in love and be loved, start here. Stop trying to earn it. Stop trying to prove you deserve it. Stop performing and pretending and contorting yourself into shapes you think others want. Instead, turn inward. Make peace with the person you find there. Not by fixing everything that's wrong, but by accepting that nothing needs fixing. You're not a project. You're not broken. You're not incomplete. You're a living, breathing expression of life itself. And that's enough. It's always been enough. From that place. Love is not something you chase or something you earn. It's something you are. It flows from you naturally, like light from the sun. And whether others return it or not becomes less important. Because you're not giving in order to get. You're giving because giving is your nature. And in that giving you discover something remarkable. You discover that you were never empty in the first place. You were always full. You were always loved. You just forgot for a while. And when you remember, when you really see it, everything changes. You stop begging for crumbs and realize you're already at the feast. You stop searching for someone to complete you and realize you were never half a person to begin with. You stop trying to earn love and simply become it. And from that becoming, from that overflowing, you meet others not as empty vessels hoping to be filled, but as rivers meeting rivers, each full from their own source, joining together not out of need, but out of the sheer joy of flowing together for a while. This is the love that doesn't fade when circumstances change. This is the love that doesn't turn bitter when expectations aren't met. This is the love that sees you at your absolute worst and doesn't turn away, because it was never based on your best behavior. It was based on the recognition that beneath all the masks, all the roles, all the stories you tell yourself, you are the same life, the same consciousness, the same being that moves through everything and everyone. And how can life stop loving itself? So here's my invitation to you. Stop looking for love out there. Stop trying to become worthy of it. Stop performing and pretending. Instead, go inward. Meet yourself fully. Accept yourself completely. Not because you're perfect, but because perfection was never required. And from that acceptance, from that peace, watch what happens. Watch how love begins to flow from you without effort. Watch how the right people appear in your life, not to save you, but to dance with you. Watch how life itself begins to feel like the embrace you've been seeking all along. The love you want is not out there waiting to be found. It's right here, in you, waiting to be recognized. And once you see it, once you really know it, you'll understand that you were never unloved, never alone, never incomplete. You were always held by something so vast, so generous, so utterly without conditions, that you couldn't see it because you were looking for something smaller, something you could grasp and control. But real love cannot be grasped. It can only be surrendered to. And in that surrender, you discover that you are it, you always were, and you always will be.
If you're hearing these words, it isn't by mistake. This moment found you exactly when it needed to, not a second too soon, not a moment too late. Life has a way of arranging such meetings when the noise begins to settle just enough for you to notice its whisper. Perhaps you were looking for something tonight, or perhaps you stumbled here without knowing why. But nothing truly stumbles. Everything arrives with a certain rhythm, like the wave that reaches the shore precisely when the tide decides it's time. We like to believe we choose what we see, what we listen to, what we pay attention to. Yet, sometimes it feels more truthful to say that life chooses for us that certain ideas, certain voices, certain moments seek us out when we're ready to hear them. So maybe you didn't find this. Maybe it found you. And if it did, it's because something inside you is ready to remember. Ready to remember that change is not the enemy, that growth does not have to come with struggle, and that even the smallest shifts can carry you toward a life you can finally breathe in. A lot can change for the good in 6 months, not through obsession or pressure, but through awareness, gentleness, and a willingness to cooperate with what already wants to unfold. 6 months, that's all it takes for the seasons to turn, for a tree to shed and grow anew, for the moon to circle the earth half a dozen times. 6 months is long enough for an old pattern to dissolve and a new rhythm to take root. Yet to the hurried mind, it sounds like an eternity. To the wise heart, it's only a breath. So let us begin not with a plan, but with a pause. Take one slow breath and feel how even this simple act carries you from the person you were a moment ago into someone slightly changed. Every inhale is arrival, every exhale, release. This is the entire secret of transformation written in the language of the body. Take in what nourishes, let go of what no longer serves, and trust the rhythm in between. The first teaching, then, is simple. Do not rush your becoming. You cannot bully the flower into blooming, nor scold the sun into rising faster. Life ripens at its own pace. What matters is not speed, but sincerity. When you give yourself completely to the moment you're in, time becomes an ally rather than a threat. The minutes are no longer something to beat, they are something to inhabit. You see, most people try to change their lives as though they were rearranging furniture, push this here, drag that there, throw out what you don't like. But the deeper kind of change begins in stillness. It starts when you stop treating yourself as a project to be fixed and start seeing yourself as a process to be understood. 6 months of honest observation, noticing your reactions, your habits, your hidden fears, will do more than 6 years of self-improvement performed out of guilt. The second teaching is awareness. Not the strained awareness of someone trying to meditate perfectly, but the soft kind, the awareness that simply notices. Notice when you tighten, notice when you breathe freely, notice what brings lightness to your chest and what contracts it. Awareness doesn't demand that you act immediately. It only asks that you see clearly. And clarity, all by itself, begins to move mountains. You might say, but noticing isn't enough. I need to do something. Yet the truth is, most of our doing springs from confusion. We act before we understand, and then we wonder why the results look the same. The power of awareness is that it lets right action emerge naturally, the way a path appears once the fog lifts. 6 months of honest noticing will reveal more direction than a lifetime of anxious decision-making. The third teaching is gentleness. Real growth is tender, not violent. The seed breaks open not because it is forced, but because the conditions invite it. So be gentle with your timing. You are unfolding exactly as you must. Gentleness is not laziness. It is intelligence, the intelligence of the universe that knows how to turn an acorn into an oak without rushing. When you replace self-criticism with curiosity, life begins to cooperate with you instead of resisting you. The next teaching is presence in the ordinary. Many people chase enlightenment as if it were hidden in some distant temple, when in truth it hides in the small things you overlook. The way sunlight falls on your hands, the sound of water running from the tap, the silence between two breaths. If you give yourself to these, even for a moment, you are already practicing awakening. 6 months of giving your full attention to the simple will make the complex take care of itself. Now, the mind will argue that such small things can't possibly change a life. It wants grand gestures, dramatic transformations, fireworks of self-reinvention. But think of the ocean. It shapes continents grain by grain. Think of music. It's nothing but waves of air, yet it can make you weep. The subtle is not weak, it is foundational. If you honor the subtle each day, you begin to live from the source instead of the surface. The fifth teaching is trust. Trust is the quiet confidence that the universe knows what it's doing, even when you do not. It is understanding that you are being shaped by forces wiser than your plans. Trust is not blind faith, it's intimate cooperation with reality. It's what happens when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this showing me? In 6 months of living with that single shift in question, you would become unrecognizable, not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting what was already trying to help you grow. And of course, gratitude, the awareness of enough. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending that everything is perfect. It means noticing that perfection isn't required for beauty. The moment you begin to thank the small things, a clear sky, a kind word, the warmth of your own body, you step into abundance. For 6 months, practice this. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, pause, breathe, and name one thing that still supports you. You will find the complaint fades, and in its place, something steady arises, a kind of quiet contentment that doesn't depend on circumstance. Now, someone might say, but I've tried all this before. I know these ideas. To which I would ask, do you know them, or have you simply heard them? To know a truth is to live it until it becomes the way you breathe. 6 months of living, even one of these truths, sincerely will teach you more than 100 inspirational quotes ever could. And so the invitation is simple. Do less, notice more. Stop demanding that life give you instant proof of progress. The proof is already there, in every breath, every sunrise, every gentle reminder that you are still here, still capable of renewal. You are not late, you are not behind. You are right on time, because time itself is your teacher, not your jailer. Let this next half year be your experiment in trust. Let it be the season in which you stop forcing and start listening. Watch what happens when you replace control with curiosity, tension with patience, judgment with awareness. The change will not announce itself with fanfare. One morning, you'll simply wake up and realize the heaviness you used to carry is gone. You didn't fix it. It simply melted when you stopped feeding it. And when that happens, you will smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally understand it never needed to be. You will see that the universe was never testing you, only teaching you to listen. And in that listening, the next 6 months and the rest of your life will take care of themselves. There comes a moment when awareness no longer feels like practice, but presence, when you stop trying to be mindful and simply are. It happens quietly, often without you noticing. You realize one day that the thoughts which once ruled you have softened, that the noise has lost its authority. You still think, you still plan, you still worry from time to time, but the thoughts no longer pull you by the collar. They pass through like weather over a mountain. The mountain does not resist the clouds. It allows them to drift by, knowing they cannot stay. This is what maturity of spirit feels like, not perfection, not constant peace, but a deep familiarity with change. You no longer fear every shift in mood, every season of uncertainty. You begin to see that everything, even confusion, has its place in the dance. 6 months of living this way, of greeting each day as a visitor rather than an obstacle, and you will notice the difference not in what happens to you, but in how you meet it. The great paradox of awakening is that it doesn't make you immune to life. It makes you more intimate with it. The rain still falls, the heart still aches, the losses still come, but suffering changes its texture. Pain is no longer an enemy to flee. It becomes a teacher to listen to. And the listening itself is the release. When you stop running from what hurts, you find that what hurts had something sacred to tell you all along. You begin to see that control was never the source of safety. Control is the mind's imitation of trust, an anxious attempt to replace faith with structure. But life cannot be caged. The more tightly you grip, the more it slips. Yet when you open your hands, everything falls gently into place. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stop disturbing the natural flow. You see, there is a wisdom at work beneath your plans, the same wisdom that turns caterpillars into butterflies, tides into moons, seeds into forests. That wisdom does not need your constant supervision. It only asks that you cooperate by not standing in the way. When you align with that intelligence through stillness, through honesty, through awareness, life begins to move through you effortlessly. You become the dancer who no longer counts the steps, but simply moves with the rhythm. This is what the ancient Taoists called Wu Wei, effortless action, doing without forcing. It does not mean passivity. It means the harmony between what you want and what the moment allows. To act in this way is to feel that life is not something happening to you, but something happening as you. The boundary between the doer and the deed dissolves. You are painting, but also being painted. You are breathing, but also being breathed. If, for 6 months, you practiced only this, the art of letting life breathe through you, you would begin to taste freedom, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. You would wake in the morning not with the weight of things to control, but with curiosity for how the day might unfold. The mind would still whisper its worries, but you would smile at them like an old friend who no longer needs to be believed. And in this space, something miraculous happens. Joy returns. Not the fleeting pleasure that depends on outcomes, but the quiet joy of existing. The kind of joy a child feels watching raindrops race down a window, or the kind that rises for no reason at all while walking alone. This joy is the natural fragrance of presence. It doesn't need an explanation. It is what remains when the noise of striving fades. You may ask, but what about ambition? What about goals? The awakened person doesn't lose direction. They simply stop mistaking the destination for the journey. There's nothing wrong with wanting success, or love, or peace, but you will suffer if you think they live somewhere in the future. All the joy you seek is hidden in how you walk toward them, not in their arrival. 6 months of walking mindfully toward what you love will change your relationship with desire itself. You will no longer chase, you will invite. This is the art of surrender, not giving up, but giving in. To surrender is to recognize that life knows more about life than you do. It is the humility to admit that the same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies might be trusted to handle your next chapter. When you surrender to that intelligence, you stop praying for things to go your way and start asking to see the way things are. That shift alone can dissolve a lifetime of tension, and so you begin to act from stillness instead of panic. You begin to speak from clarity instead of defense. You begin to love without needing to possess. What once felt like effort becomes grace. What once felt like a burden becomes a blessing in disguise. In that simplicity, 6 months can become a lifetime's worth of evolution. Now, there's another illusion worth letting go of, the illusion of progress as linear. You will not rise every day. Some days you'll fall. Some weeks you'll feel lost. But understand, a spiral moves both upward and inward. Growth revisits its lessons, but each time with more awareness. When you see old patterns return, don't call it failure, call it review. The universe is showing you what's left to integrate. 6 months of honoring even your setbacks as sacred will reshape how you see yourself. Instead of punishing your mistakes, you will learn from them like a patient gardener who studies why a flower didn't bloom, not with anger, but with curiosity. You will begin to see that every event, pleasant or painful, was another doorway to understanding. And that understanding, not achievement, is what makes a life fulfilled. Eventually, you will look back on these months and realize that what changed most was not your circumstances, but your relationship with them. The storm didn't stop. You learned how to dance in the rain. The noise of the world didn't quiet. You discovered the silence beneath it. The future didn't become certain. You made peace with uncertainty itself. That peace is freedom, not escape from life, but intimacy with it. And then, at last, the mind relaxes. It no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. You see that life was never asking you to win, but to awaken, to participate, to witness the miracle of being conscious, even for a brief moment, in this endless unfolding of the cosmos. What could possibly be missing from that? So, if these words have found you, let them remind you of something you already know deep down. You are not late, you are not broken, you are not behind, you are precisely where the river needs you to be. The current has carried you here, not to test you, but to teach you how to flow. The coming 6 months will pass, whether you worry or not, whether you struggle or trust. But if you choose trust, if you choose awareness, gentleness, gratitude, then those same 6 months can become the softest revolution of your life. And when the time comes to look back, you will smile, not because everything went according to plan, but because you finally learned to dance with the plan of everything. And in that smile, life will smile back. There comes a peculiar moment in one's life when joy simply vanishes. Not suddenly, like a door slamming shut, but gradually, like a room dimming without anyone touching the lights. You look around and everything is technically the same. The people you used to laugh with are still there. The hobbies you loved still exist. The world has not changed its shape. And yet, you feel as though something essential has slipped quietly out of your hands. You wake up and the day feels flat. You sit among things that used to spark curiosity and nothing happens. You listen to music that once made your chest bloom with feeling and it now passes through you like wind through an empty house. Conversations feel muffled. Activities feel distant. Even happiness feels like a memory someone else once told you. You begin to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why does nothing bring me joy anymore? This is perhaps one of the most frightening questions a human being can face, because it touches the deepest fear of all, the fear that something in you has broken. But what if the opposite is true? What if nothing brings you joy because something in you is finally working? You see, joy is not something you manufacture. It is something that arises naturally when you are aligned with your own life. It comes uninvited, like a bird singing on your windowsill. You don't have to force it, and you certainly don't have to chase it. Joy is the fragrance of a life lived from the center of oneself. So, when joy disappears, it is not because you have failed. It is because something in you is shifting. Something is dissolving. Something is releasing its grip. There is a phase of awakening that no one likes to talk about. A phase where the colors of life fade, the meaning drains out of your ambitions, and the things you once depended on for emotional nourishment no longer satisfy you. You feel empty, unmoved, disconnected, as though the world has stepped away from you. But what has really happened is that you have stepped away from the world you created before you understood yourself. The numbness you feel is not the death of joy. It is the death of stimulation, the death of distraction, the death of an identity that was built to cope, to perform, to impress, to survive. You cannot find joy because you are no longer resonating with the version of yourself that used to seek it. Now, this stage feels terribly confusing. You may think you are depressed, or apathetic, or emotionally dull, but numbness is not a malfunction. Numbness is a signal. It means your inner system is shutting down outdated pathways. It is refusing to sustain the old narrative. It is pulling you inward, away from noise and toward truth. Imagine you are holding a cup filled with muddy water. The more you swirl it, the murkier it becomes. But if you allow it to become still, the sediment sinks. Clarity emerges from quiet, not from motion. In the same way, your joy sinks when life is asking you to be still, not because joy is gone, but because clarity needs space to surface. The absence of emotion is not the beginning of despair. It is the beginning of purification. You see, the universe is remarkably intelligent, far more intelligent than the thinking mind. And when the life you have been living no longer matches the truth of who you are becoming, the universe does a very gentle thing. It withdraws your excitement for that life. It takes away your enthusiasm, your craving, your emotional reward system, not to punish you, but to guide you toward a larger horizon. You cannot stay in old rooms once your soul has outgrown them. But because humans fear stillness, you interpret this withdrawal as a problem. You chase joy harder, only to feel it slip further through your hands. You try to recreate old pleasures, revive old habits, repeat old patterns. But joy does not return, and the more you force, the more exhausted you become. You begin to ask, why can't I feel anything? But stillness is not nothingness. It is information. It is your inner being saying, you must stop now. You must listen. You must see what is really happening. The collapse of joy is the first sign that the old you is dissolving. The identity you built to survive your childhood, or to satisfy society, or to earn validation, or to keep yourself safe, its time has run out. And the dissolution of an identity always feels like the dissolution of feeling, because for a moment you do not know who you are supposed to be. You are no longer the person you once were, but not yet the person you are becoming. This in-between space is emotionally quiet, and in the quiet, joy hides. Not because joy has left, but because it belongs to the self you are growing into, not the self you are shedding. Now, some people try to escape this phase. They try to feel something, anything, through distraction. They seek stimulation, drama, high highs, low lows, anything to convince themselves they are still alive. They fear the quiet because the quiet feels like emptiness. But emptiness is misunderstood. Emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the clearing of space for life to enter. It is the moment the soil is turned before new seeds are planted. You cannot grow anything on ground that is cluttered with old roots. So life uproots you. It empties you of old joy so that new joy can take root. This process is not comfortable, but it is necessary, because the joy you used to feel was not deep enough. It was joy based on external stimulation, joy based on identity, joy that depended on circumstances going your way, joy that could be taken from you. Life wants something more stable for you, something deeper, something that comes from within rather than from the world. And so it takes away the old joy, so you can discover a joy that rises from presence, not performance. And this transition is always prefaced by numbness. Before the heart can feel more, it must feel less. Before consciousness expands, it withdraws from the surface of things. Before the self awakens, it sleeps. This is why nothing brings you joy, because the part of you that used to chase joy is dissolving, and the part of you that will experience real joy has not yet fully awakened. Imagine a caterpillar. Before it becomes a butterfly, there is a moment when it is neither one nor the other. It dissolves entirely into a kind of living soup, a formless in-between. If it were capable of emotion, it might say, Nothing feels meaningful anymore. I don't know what I am. I feel like nothing. But the caterpillar is not dying. It is reorganizing. You are reorganizing. The numbness is your cocoon. The emptiness is your metamorphosis. You are not losing joy. You are losing the version of yourself that required the world to provide it. And here is something even more subtle. The universe often removes joy when you have been living on borrowed energy, when you have been pushing yourself, ignoring yourself, betraying yourself in small ways, when you have been moving too fast for too long, when your nervous system is exhausted beyond what you can consciously admit. Sometimes nothing brings you joy because your body is simply tired of enduring, tired of pretending, tired of performing optimism, tired of carrying the weight of expectations and emotional obligations, tired of trying to survive without rest. And so joy shuts down, not as a failure, but as protection. Your system cannot run on empty forever. It forces stillness when you refuse to give it willingly. This is why joylessness feels like being underwater. The world is muted because you are being asked to rest. You are being asked to face the quiet truth of your own exhaustion. Now, the mind resists this fiercely. It says, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be excited. I should be productive. I should be grateful. But the universe is not interested in your shoulds. It is only interested in your truth. And truth often arrives disguised as stillness, because only in stillness can you finally hear what your life has been trying to tell you. When joy collapses, meaning begins to loosen. The things that once held your identity together no longer feel solid. You begin to question who you are, what you want, what you believe, and why you have lived the way you have lived. This questioning is not a crisis. It is clarity. It is the beginning of authenticity. To awaken is to feel the collapse of borrowed meaning, the collapse of external joy, the collapse of the old self. To awaken is to pass through numbness on the way to truth. And here is the great paradox. Joy disappears because you are finally ready to feel real joy, not the joy of excitement, but the joy of being, not the joy of pleasure, but the joy of presence, not the joy of escape, but the joy of awareness. Real joy does not rise quickly. It rises slowly, like a tide. It rises from quiet, and before it rises, the shoreline must be cleared. This clearing is happening now. You are not broken. You are being prepared. You are not emotionally dead. You are emotionally resetting. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding yourself. The reason nothing brings you joy is because the old you can no longer be satisfied with the world that once comforted it. Your sensitivity is changing. Your awareness is deepening. Your soul is taking the steering wheel from your persona. And personas do not surrender joyfully. So the universe removes joy. It removes stimulation. It removes old meaning. It removes everything you used to lean on. And in that removal, you begin to stand on the ground of yourself for the first time. There is a point, usually after the numbness has lingered longer than you thought you could endure, when something almost imperceptible begins to shift. It does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself with fireworks or dramatic emotion. It comes in the smallest way, so subtle that you nearly miss it. A moment where your breath feels slightly deeper. A moment where the world looks a touch less flat. A moment where a sound or a glimpse of light stirs something faint in your chest. It is not joy itself, but the space joy will return to. You see, before joy can return, the place inside you that receives joy has to be rebuilt. The old structure collapsed with your old identity, and you cannot feel joy through an identity that is dissolving. Joy cannot enter a house that is being rebuilt. The foundation must be cleared, the walls must be undone, the windows must be opened. This is the work that numbness does. Numbness is the renovation of the inner world. And once the renovation reaches a certain point, you begin to feel again. Not fully, not dramatically, but honestly. This is the first sign that you have entered the second phase of awakening, the phase where your emotional life begins to reorganize itself around presence rather than identity. You begin to sense that beneath the quiet, something is alive, something is breathing, something is waiting for you to slow down enough to notice it. You may wake up one morning and find that the silence feels less like emptiness and more like spaciousness. You may look at the sky and feel a faint recognition of beauty, not because the sky changed, but because your capacity to perceive it is returning. You may sit with yourself and feel a softness that was unavailable to you before. This is how the new joy approaches, not as excitement, but as gentleness, not as a high, but as a deepening. Joy begins to return as presence. Presence is the ability to inhabit your own life without the filter of expectation or fear. It is the ability to feel without interpreting, without managing, without controlling. Presence is the purest form of awareness. It is the ground of all real joy. Now, at first, this presence can feel unfamiliar. You are used to emotion arriving in waves, in highs and lows, in bursts of enthusiasm or disappointment. But presence brings a different flavor of experience. It is quieter, steadier, more patient. It does not intoxicate. It does not overwhelm. It simply reveals. And so joy shuts down, not as a failure, but as protection. Your system cannot run on empty forever. It forces stillness when you refuse to give it willingly. This is why joylessness feels like being underwater. The world is muted because you are being asked to rest. You are being asked to face the quiet truth of your own exhaustion. Now, the mind resists this fiercely. It says, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be excited. I should be productive. I should be grateful. But the universe is not interested in your shoulds. It is only interested in your truth. And truth often arrives disguised as stillness, because only in stillness can you finally hear what your life has been trying to tell you. When joy collapses, meaning begins to loosen. The things that once held your identity together no longer feel solid. You begin to question who you are, what you want, what you believe, and why you have lived the way you have lived. This questioning is not a crisis, it is clarity. It is the beginning of authenticity. To awaken is to feel the collapse of borrowed meaning, the collapse of external joy, the collapse of the old self. To awaken is to pass through numbness on the way to truth. And here is the great paradox. Joy disappears because you are finally ready to feel real joy. Not the joy of excitement, but the joy of being. Not the joy of pleasure, but the joy of presence. Not the joy of escape, but the joy of awareness. Real joy does not rise quickly. It rises slowly, like a tide. It rises from quiet. And before it rises, the shoreline must be cleared. This clearing is happening now. You are not broken. You are being prepared. You are not emotionally dead. You are emotionally resetting. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding yourself. The reason nothing brings you joy is because the old you can no longer be satisfied with the world that once comforted it. Your sensitivity is changing. Your awareness is deepening. Your soul is taking the steering wheel from your persona. And personas do not surrender joyfully. So the universe removes joy. It removes stimulation. It removes old meaning. It removes everything you used to lean on. And in that removal, you begin to stand on the ground of yourself for the first time. There is a point, usually after the numbness has lingered longer than you thought you could endure, when something almost imperceptible begins to shift. It does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself with fireworks or dramatic emotion. It comes in the smallest way, so subtle that you nearly miss it. A moment where your breath feels slightly deeper. A moment where the world looks a touch less flat. A moment where a sound or a glimpse of light stirs something faint in your chest. It is not joy itself, but the space joy will return to. You see, before joy can return, the place inside you that receives joy has to be rebuilt. The old structure collapsed with your old identity, and you cannot feel joy through an identity that is dissolving. Joy cannot enter a house that is being rebuilt. The foundation must be cleared, the walls must be undone, the windows must be opened. This is the work that numbness does. Numbness is the renovation of the inner world. And once the renovation reaches a certain point, you begin to feel again. Not fully, not dramatically, but honestly. This is the first sign that you have entered the second phase of awakening, the phase where your emotional life begins to reorganize itself around presence rather than identity. You begin to sense that beneath the quiet, something is alive, something is breathing, something is waiting for you to slow down enough to notice it. You may wake up one morning and find that the silence feels less like emptiness and more like spaciousness. You may look at the sky and feel a faint recognition of beauty, not because the sky changed, but because your capacity to perceive it is returning. You may sit with yourself and feel a softness that was unavailable to you before. This is how the new joy approaches. Not as excitement, but as gentleness. Not as a high, but as a deepening. Joy begins to return as presence. Presence is the ability to inhabit your own life without the filter of expectation or fear. It is the ability to feel without interpreting, without managing, without controlling. Presence is the purest form of awareness. It is the ground of all real joy. Now, at first, this presence can feel unfamiliar. You are used to emotion arriving in waves, in highs and lows, in bursts of enthusiasm or disappointment. But presence brings a different flavor of experience. It is quieter, steadier, more patient. It does not intoxicate. It does not overwhelm. It simply reveals. You begin to see that joy was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to return. The return of joy is the return of truth, the return of alignment, the return of the part of you that was buried beneath effort and identity. It does not matter how long you have been numb. It does not matter how deeply you believe something was wrong with you. Life has been reorganizing you in the dark, preparing you, softening you, bringing you to a place where joy can be recognized again, not as a burst of emotion, but as the quiet radiance of being awake. You see, joylessness is not the opposite of joy. It is the purification of joy. It is the space where old meanings dissolve so new ones can emerge. It is the silence before the deeper life begins. And now you stand at the threshold of that deeper life, a life in which you do not chase feeling, but allow feeling, a life where you do not grasp at joy, but recognize joy in everything, a life where you understand that joy is not something you find, but something you become. Because when the old you falls away, and the noise dissolves, and the numbness clears, you discover something astonishing. Joy was never in the world. It was always in your awareness of the world, and now that awareness is being restored. Not as it was before, but as something new, something deeper, something clearer, something truer. What returns now is not excitement. What returns now is not stimulation. What returns now is the simple miracle of being alive. This is the joy that cannot be taken from you. This is the joy that arises when you stop chasing and begin listening. This is the joy that emerges when you finally meet your life without resistance. This is the joy that was waiting for you in the silence. And now, because you have passed through the numbness, because you have been emptied, because you have surrendered the old identity, you can finally feel what was here all along. A joy that does not shout, a joy that does not vanish, a joy that does not depend on anything, a joy that simply is. This is the return. This is the rebirth. This is the beginning of a life lived from the center of yourself. And this is where joy begins.